To start off, I'm a 23-year-old female. A lot of people say I look younger than my age, which is probably worth mentioning. I can be a bit of an introvert at times, so I'm not really the type of person to go up to someone I'd like to get to know and strike up a conversation. Talking to people online made it much easier for me. New Year's was coming and I was single, so I figured why not go on Tinder. Not looking for anything serious, but just to see what the fuss was about. It's a decision I wish I never made. I matched with this girl. We'll call her Ashley. We shared a lot of common interests, and she was super cute. She lived a little ways from me, but that didn't bother me, since we had hit it off instantly. Before I knew it, we were talking on Snapchat, and eventually exchanged phone numbers. Everything was going great, and she seemed to be exactly who she said she was. Around came New Year's Eve. Ashley messaged me and asked me to come over right before midnight. Before I could even reply, she sent several more messages, becoming a bit pushy about the whole thing and how badly she wanted me to come over. Red flags should have been going off in my head as to why she was being so pushy about it, out of nowhere. I did hesitate at first, just for the fact we hadn't been talking that long. However, she put on her charm and it worked. Still a little reluctant in the back of my mind, I agreed. She sent her address, I got ready and left. I figured if I arrived a little early, maybe we could hang out for a bit before the turn of 12 a.m. I pulled up in her house at around 9. First thing I noticed, all the lights were off, and there were no cars in the driveway. I sent her a message. "Hey, I'm outside, I'm here." She responded apologizing. She just left and was over at a friend's house. I thought this was odd, since she knew I was coming over. Again, red flags should have been going off, but I ignored it. She sent the new address, and it was a little further away, but I was already in the general area, so I started driving over. When I got there, it seemed like it was completely abandoned. Not just the house, but the whole neighborhood. At this point, alarm bells were going off like crazy, and I got this gut-sinking feeling. Before I could even pull out my phone to message Ashley to tell her the whole thing wasn't a good idea, and I was going to head home, her and 3 men dressed in black robes emerged from the darkness within the house. They started coming towards my car, holding what looked like sharp metal objects. My heart sank, and I sped out of there like a bat out of hell. I kept driving for I don't know how long. When I finally calmed down enough and got home, still in shock about what happened and how close I came to something really bad happening if I hadn't drove off when I did. My phone went off. It was a message from Ashley. All it said was, "You would have been perfect." I blocked her on everything and deleted Tinder entirely. Not all people you meet online are bad. Rather, it's friendships or even relationships. But just be careful of some people's true intentions out there.
A midnight guest. Back in 2006, I stayed the night at my girlfriend's house. It was the middle of winter and there was a storm passing through, so my girlfriend and her parents suggested I stay the night. This was a relief since I lived 40 minutes away, and the wintry mixes can make the roads quite icy and difficult to drive on, this being in Middle Tennessee. Her parents' house is your typical 60s ranch-style home. It still had the wood panel walls that were common in that era and creaky wooden floors. I stayed in the spare bedroom that was right across from my girlfriend's. I always had a problem sleeping in different beds, even on vacation, but I had spent the night once or twice prior to this and knew what to expect. I kissed my girlfriend goodnight, went into the spare bedroom and fell asleep. I woke up suddenly hours later to the sound of slow, heavy, thudding footsteps in the hallway. At first, I thought it was her dad walking to the bathroom. It wasn't. I heard the steps continue down the hallway before stopping at the door of the spare bedroom, the bedroom occupied by me. The steps continued into the bedroom. The doors did not open. My heart was beating out of my chest. Slowly, the steps made its way to the bed and stopped. Internally, I was in full panic mode, but I was somehow able to remain calm. A few seconds later, I could feel it sit or lean on the bed beside me. I was facing the wall, so I really had no idea what was behind me. I managed to somehow move a little closer to the wall. It too moved closer. I quickly grabbed my cell phone and called my girlfriend. I already figured that whatever was behind me wasn't human, so I didn't necessarily feel physically threatened. She answered after a few rings and I asked her to come into the room. Maybe she thought it was a midnight rendezvous. She walks into the room a few seconds later, flips on the light and asks me what's going on. I turn round and there was nothing beside me. It takes me a minute to collect myself. I brush everything off and make up some story to tell her to go back to sleep. I take out my laptop and play some Christian music, hoping that would ward off any future guest. The next morning, I tell her exactly what happened. She wasn't shocked. She told me stories of how she and her sister would hear typing in the middle of the night in her dad's office, when they knew nobody was in there. She heard someone run up to the basement steps and slam the door shut, and nobody would be there. Her aunt had a similar experience as mine with the footsteps in the hall. She got up to see if anyone was there, and the hallway was empty. To this day, I am still a little paranoid about going over to my in-laws, especially when I have to go to the back bedrooms. A few years ago we were living with them in between selling our house and moving to our next home. One evening, I got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and I'm pretty certain I heard someone whisper outside the bathroom door. I've somewhat brushed it off, but the memories are still there. Oh, and apparently her parents have never witnessed anything after living there for almost 30 years. Lucky them.
Bearing this job is kind of a burden, because I get calls every day, and sometimes it's just stressful. However, last week has been busy. There have been numerous UFO sightings here in Michigan, and people have been saying weird things have been occurring, such as a humanoid standing behind trees and just observing. I've always believed that these were just conspiracies started by madmen, and probably even the government, just to get people's mind off the government's response to the pandemic. At least, that's what I thought. Until now. Now, whatever I'm about to tell you is going to sound crazy, but I swear that it's true. I was sitting in my chair, relaxing to some chips because I didn't have time for dinner. Each bite of the chip made an echoing noise through the building as I slowly devoured it, listening to the rain outside. Most of my colleagues had already left, and I was alone in the building. It was pretty dark outside, and the only thing that illuminated the surroundings was the bright moon and the street poles. The day was less busy than usual, and I barely received any calls. I was finally at relief that all of the crazy stuff that was going on in town was over, until the phone began ringing. I quickly answered it, putting my chips down. 911, what's your emergency? Hi, I think there are some people robbing my neighbor's house. I just saw some people break open the window, and I think they're looting his place. Alright, sir. Can you please tell me your address? Yeah, sure. Of course. He proceeded to tell me his address calmly, despite the ongoing robbery next door. Thanks, sir. The police will arrive soon. Please stay on the line till then. Alright. Is your neighbor alright, or... Well, he's on vacation, so there's no one in the house. Alright, sir, can you describe what the robbers are doing? Yeah, one sec. I listened closely to the noise from his phone, but I couldn't make out anything apart from the occasional loud breathing of the caller. They're just walking around, I guess. It sorta seems like they're searching for something, but can't find it. Alright, sir. Try to stay low so they don't see you. Yeah, wait. They're leaving the house. A few seconds passed by until I heard his voice again. There are 4 of them. Yeah, it's 4. Can you describe their appearance? One sec, let me get closer. I heard the caller shuffle through his house, probably going to a nearby window with a better view. They look off. Sir, can you be a bit more descriptive than off? Well, I mean, they're tall. All of them are at least 6'8" or something. Alright, that's a start. What are they doing now? My heart began to pound. How the hell is someone 6'8"? I knew something was wrong from the way the situation sounded, but I tried to remain as calm as possible. They're saying something to each other. I can hear them murmuring, but I don't think they're talking in English. Alright, just try keeping an eye on them, and... Damn, I think they're coming this way. Oh damn, they're coming towards my house. Sir, can you please check all your doors and windows? And please make sure they're locked. The adrenaline began to hit. What the hell was I gonna do? I'm just sitting here trying to help this guy till the cops get there. Sir, he didn't respond. Sir, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Are all your windows and doors closed? Can you confirm that there are no points of entry for the intruders? Yeah, everything is closed. I don't think they can get in. Alright, sir. Now I need you to listen to me. Yeah, I'm all ears. I could hear his voice trembling. He was scared out of his mind. Heck, who wouldn't be scared if the robbers were 6'8"? Sir, do you have any place in your house where you can hide? I guess my basement. Alright, sir. Please go to your basement as quiet as possible, and don't let them see you. Give me a second. I could hear him moving as the floor made a couple of quiet creaks. I'm in. Alright, sir. Try to be as quiet as possible now. They might be. The sound of a loud crash pierced my ear. I knew something was wrong. This guy was in trouble. I couldn't even give him the reassurance that the cops would come in time, because the roads were all snowy. Sir, what was that? They're in. They broke into my house. Damn. I've been doing this job for 2 years, and I've never had a call like this. Most of my calls were just normal day-to-day crap, except this. Sir, the police are on their way, and they should be at your house in 2 minutes. I just need you to... I think they're checking all of the rooms. Sir, please stay where you are until the police arrive. Yeah, alright. Sir, is there any weapon near you? Wait, let me check. I heard him shuffle through the room, trying to make no noise. Yeah, there's a baseball bat. Alright, sir. Please try to use that to keep yourself safe in case anything happens. Yeah, okay. A few seconds passed by without us talking. I sat in my chair biting my nails, till I heard a sound. I'm sorry. Sir? I could hear him whimpering. I'm probably the worst caller you have had in a long time. It's like I shoved you into this situation. Sir, it's my job to do this. I know, but you probably would have had a regular night if it wasn't for me. I paused for some time. He was telling the truth. I would have had a regular Friday night. I probably would have gone home in a few minutes and binged some Netflix. But this was who I am. I save people. And I was determined to save this guy. I looked at the screen in front of me, displaying the coordinates of the police and the caller's details. Brody, I promise you that you're going to be safe. I hope so. Thanks for all of this. It's no problem, sir. He went silent for a while. I guess it was probably because the intruders were getting close to the basement. They're trying to open the door. This was it. I had no idea what to do anymore. Sir, please stay calm. Try to make no noise. And if they get close to you, just... I heard a huge thud from the caller. They got in. I looked at the coordinates of the police car. It was at the end of the street. Sir, please protect yourself with the bat. Damn, they're looking through the whole basement. They're gonna come my way. Sir, hold on for a couple of seconds. The cops are on there. What the hell? Sir, their feet aren't touching the ground. My heart dropped. I began imagining a ghost just floating around in the basement. But my caller had to be exaggerating. Sir, please just hang on for a... Damn! They're coming towards me. He began screaming, and I could hear footsteps approaching him. What's wrong with their faces? Everything's pale. Sir, please calm down. I need you to stay. They're not human. The line was cut. The police arrived at his house a couple of seconds later. There was no sign of him. However, they did find a circle shape imprinted in the lawn of his neighbor's house. My caller has been placed on the missing list, but no one has spotted him yet. He's pretty much deemed dead. People think the robbers killed him and hid his body. But I know what happened that night. Those things took him.
I love living in the country, away from all the lights. I've taken over a dozen meteor pictures and should still have time for more. I trudge through waist-high grass, climb into my car, and listen to the radio as the camera automatically takes another picture. Metallica's Enter Sandman plays softly, causing me to smile and close my eyes. When I wake, the full moon is up, bathing the field in an eerie glow. The grass undulates as if waving in the breeze. That's odd. The wind isn't moving the trees. The wave of grass continues steadily towards me, enveloping my car. I stick my head out through the window and watch one of the waves pass right beside me. It stops moving, and out of the grass, I see glowing red eyes. I throw my head back in the window and roll it up, ignoring the sound of something scraping on the door. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I focus on my breathing to avoid a panic attack. In my mirror, I see the mounds of grass moving away. I roll my window back down, lean out, look down, and see no red eyes. I think it's time to go home. My camera sits a mere 4 feet away, but I won't step out of my car. I pull over closer to the camera and reach out through the window, all the while shooting furtive glances down at the grass. Got it. I sling myself back inside, roll up my window, and try to calm down. The longer I sit, the sillier the whole thing seems. It had to be a dream. I fell asleep and dreamt the whole thing. I chuckle at my own stupidity, then turn the car around and drive back over the same tracks I used to get here. I drive out of the field and park beside the house. I head for the back door, exhausted. 2 a.m. is late, even for me. Against my better judgment, I lean down to look at the side of the car door, and I'm surprised to see scrapes on the metal. Must have been a stick or something I brushed against in the field, I tell myself. I head inside, lock the door, plop on the couch, and start looking through the night's pictures. Several of the meteor pictures are nicely framed with the field and trees. As the moon comes up, the stars disappear. This must be where I fell asleep. As I scroll through, I notice the waves in the field. So I didn't dream that. I enlarge the picture. My breath catches in my throat. Red eyes. I push to the right and see another set of eyes. I zoom back out and count dozens of them. Every hump of grass has glowing red eyes looking out. Oh my god. My spine turns to ice when I hear scraping at the back door.
Oh, Christ. I muttered to myself as the first flakes of snow started to fall. They gathered in fuzzy clumps over the windshield before my wipers cleared them away. I've been waiting for 20 minutes now, in my sister's driveway. Had I chosen to wait inside with her, I had been dead by now, thanks to her 2 gray cats, cute little devils, but murdered to my sinuses, puffy eyes, and a clogged up throat. That's just what I needed. Every Christmas, our family made an annual trip to go to my grandparents' cabin tucked away in the woods of Hope, Alaska, and I hoped to beat the heavy snowfall that was forecasted. Since my sister's license was suspended from the DUI, here I was, a hostage to time, with my finger tapped anxiously on the steering wheel. When my mother had asked me to be the one to grab my sister, I had honestly dreaded from the start. It wasn't that we hated one another, we just weren't as close anymore. After decades of constant arguments and bitter disagreements, we became distant and our relationship fizzled. Yes, we were siblings, but it felt more accurate to call us the residue of what siblings once were. Finally, the gates of Valhalla, her front door opened, and out she came. Her hair was forest green. The last time I had seen her, it had been white. The time before that, it was violet. Got everything? I asked as she clambered her way into the passenger seat. She responded, as she adjusted her glasses and stuffed a few bags into the back seat. And just like that, we were off. Hope was about a 30-minute drive, and it didn't take long for the awkward silence to inflate between us. It didn't help that the radio didn't work in my car, and the broken auxiliary port made your music sound like it was having that seizure. By the time we reached to the turnoff for Hope Highway, the road was turning into a thick white sheet. Thankfully, on Christmas Eve night, a long stretch of Hope's small community was quick and vacant. The cabin was tucked away in a fortress of trees 5 miles off the main road. As I made the turn, my sisters cracked the window, pulled out a blunt, and lit it with their lighter.
Want a hit?
She asked. Snow crunched beneath us. Not now, not while I'm driving.
It's a straight path. We're practically there already.
She took a drag and blew it out the window. I just want to focus on this, alright? She huffed and pushed up her glasses.
If you're that worried, then slow down a bit then.
There was the jab, a piece of bait to lure me into another fight. But I wasn't going to take the bite. Not this time. She could live with us getting there faster. The drive was almost over, and soon I'd be in a warm living room with my feet up, a spiked eggnog in my hand and Bobby Helms' Jingle Bell Rock in the air. I could already hear Uncle Jed spouting off one of his crude jokes. Why does Santa Claus have such a big...
Dude!
My sister shrieked, jabbing a finger into my side and whipping my mind back into the windshield. The car had just finished winding around the thick trail. The large body of reindeer stood in our path, eyes wide open and blank. It didn't move as the high beams found it. Snapped into panic, I twisted the wheels in a desperate swerve. The car veered greasily into the side in a fine spray of slosh. The reindeer, as known as a caribou, remained still, even as the bumper soared inches from its nose. We came into a crunching halt off the main path. Jesus, I sighed, blessed with relief. Did we hit it?
No.
My sister said, leaning out the window to check while exhaling another plume of smoke. I wound the steering wheel back around and pressed on the gas. The wheels shrilled in place, kicking up slobs of sleet, but not moving an inch. Perfect, I moaned, and unfolded myself from the seat to check it out. The two front tires were caked with black slush and practically swallowed into the mound of snow. I kicked at it, trying to clear off the ice debris from the threads and beneath the wheel well. When that tired me out, I resorted to scraping off with my fingers.
Screw off, Prancer!
I heard my sister call towards the dark silhouette of the reindeer, its antlers like gnarled fingers reaching for the treetops. Then she made a sort of startled yip, followed by a...
What the hell?
I looked up from the scrim of snow. The reindeer was now standing tall on both of its hind legs. It looked strange, like a silly caricature you see in a kid's book. But out here, in the silence of the woods, it was a creepy image. The way its vague shape stood, just two legs held, an almost human-like balance. For whatever reason, I realized that it didn't have a tail. Its muscular neck craned to the side and let out a ululating scream, a miserable squeal of metal grinding against metal. My legs were ice sculptures cementing me into the spot as the shriek quieted into a succession of wet grunts. The reindeer dropped down to his original posture and stomped heavily. Puffs of white vapor and strings of snot vented out of his nostrils. I was no hunter, but it definitely didn't take a lot to tell me that it was a pissed off animal was about to take charge. I leaped for the driver's seat, pulled the door open, and slammed it shut, just as a muffled thud of hooves reached for me. Antlers scraped the door, as his large body practically threw me over the patch I had just been standing in. Fast, very fast. My sister screamed as the large bulk of its frame rounded back around and charged again, this time shattering the headlights and submerging us in the darkness.
Just go already!
My sister hollered in my ear. I'm trying, goddammit! I hissed. The wheels continued to spin helplessly. We were trapped. The creature charged again, this time nailing the window. A cobweb of cracked blooms near my sister's head. I searched for anything, literally anything, that I could use as a weapon. I was never really a gun enthusiast, but at that moment, I had shaved my head and joined the secular monks, if it meant having a Glock in my right hand then and there. After rattling the car once more, the reindeer finally appeared to lose interest and disappeared amidst the cluster of trees. Granted some time to breathe and think, we phoned our dad and told him about the situation. He was going to come down in his pickup and get us unstuck out of this mess. I looked over at my sister, who was taking a long and steady heavy breaths between her fingers. Are you alright? I asked.
What do you think?
She grumbled.
I told you slow down.
Another jab, and this time I wasn't going to have it. You want to be useful? Get out there and push. No? Then shut the hell up. I don't need it right now. She said nothing else, and neither did I. Returning once again to the pocket of silence that our relationship succumbed to, the sooner Dad's headlight peeked into the distance, the better. Suddenly, she rolled the window down. What are you doing? I asked.
Shh.
She pursed her lips.
Just listen.
Humoring her, I waited, and sure enough, the sound reached to me. The quiet voice of a little girl coming from outside.
Somebody!
It whimpered.
I'm lost. Please help me. I'm lost.
My sister unlocked the door and motioned to open it. I grabbed her wrist. What are you doing?
There's someone out there.
Just wait a second. It's weird, isn't it? The voice continued to whine, choking between sobs and pleading for someone to help her. I didn't like the way it sounded. The same lasting drawls between words. The same weeping sounds, like someone was hitting repeat on the speaker. Something wasn't right, and my instincts were hoisting red flags left and right. Then, my sister looked at me, and her expression warped into shock. She flung back, pinning both shoulders against the interior. Things that sound like words bubbled up and didn't quite make it out of her throat. I turned and saw what was looking at me. It had the face of a man, surrounded by the mottled fur of Caribou's body. The skin was mummified brown color, wound tightly around its long skull like old crinkled leather. Snowflakes landed upon its wide, expressionless eyes and melted into the dark embranes of its pupils. It circled the car, bobbled its antlers, and fogging up the windows as it peered inside. My heart shook the walls of my throat. I locked eyes with my sister, unable to say anything between the sheer disbelief. I should have grabbed my phone, snapped a photo, recorded a video, anything, but my thoughts were jangled. It then let out the same horrible scream, but I didn't see the tight, contorted lips open. The sound was coming from its neck. Small, fleshy orifices flapping open like mouths were converting the high-pitched shriek into a mimicking cry from a little girl.
Somebody! I'm lost. Please help me. I'm lost.
Headlights glazed the area. My father's pickup came into view, paving its way down the path. the reindeer, or whatever the fuck it was, ran off, vanishing once again into the snow-covered thicket. Nobody believed us. Why would they? If anybody had told me about that story, I would have assumed they were hoped up on some crazy psychedelic. But the reality of what I saw was cold, and it's something I still to this day can't fully swallow. Instead of sleeping that night, my sister and I did some research and led us to the myth of skinwalkers. Beings of some sort, capable of mimicking voices and disguising themselves as animals to lure people into the woods. After reading other accounts, there wasn't a doubt in my mind what we witnessed out there. Every so often that night, I stared out the window and eyed the yard, wondering if I see that leathery face watching me from the tree line. Neither I nor my sister ever made that trip again, much to the frustration of my family. But there was a silver lining. She and I have never been closer.
I'm a journalist living in Turkey. The story you're about to hear didn't happen to me, but the person who experienced the event sent it to me to publish. A male named Mahir is telling us about his conflict with the demons in the village during his childhood when demons cornered him in the barn after he arrived home. This is his story. When I was a kid, just like every other kid, we used to be very curious about the demons. We tried every method we knew just to summon them so that we could see them. We were even spending time in ruined places, sitting on onion skins and ashes. We had a friend called Hussein. He used to know some Arabic and some spells. He used to say things like prayers on onion skins. Anyway, we tried these things all the time. We used to hear things, such as footsteps behind us when we were trying to summon demons. Voices were coming out from ruined walls, and we used to cower in fear and run away. However, we'd be right back at it the next day. In those times, we were going to primary school. We went to Erzurum together with my family in the summer. We used to spend our holidays in the villages, and those days were amazing. In those years, the toilets used to be outdoors. That summer, about 3 or 4 days after I arrived at the village, I woke up at 3:05 a.m. I had to pee, but I couldn't go to the toilet since it was outside, and I didn't have enough courage to go out there. The following night, I woke up at the same hour and same minute, 3:05 a.m. Again, I had to pee. This time, I got up and I woke up my brother. He was mad, but still agreed to come with me. Nothing happened that night since I was with my brother. However, I was scared anyway. I was wondering why I always wake up at the same hour and the same minute every night now. It happened again the next night too, but this time, I said to myself, I can go to the toilet quickly on my own. I can do this. I swear, I still feel fear whenever I remember the following things, which I'll tell you about right now. I went to the toilet and came back. I left the door to the main house open, but it was closed when I came back. I was knocking on the door, but no one was answering. I went and knocked on the windows. It was like nobody in the house was hearing my knocks at all. So I said to myself, at least there's a small hut next to the barn. I can go there and sleep. My plan was to sleep until my aunt came to milk the cows in the morning, and then I'd head back to the main house. I got closer to the barn, where there was hay. I heard a voice from the small hut next to the barn. I stood still and I focused on the sound. Someone was laughing in the hut. I froze and I asked, "Who's there?" I took a step forward and began to hear a baby crying. I started to say all the prayers that I used to know in fear. Meanwhile, the sounds stopped. I thought about going back to the house. However, I feared the same thing may happen again, and I didn't want to walk home alone at night, all by myself. At first, I didn't understand where my courage was coming from, but now I think it was because the voices stopped when I said the prayers. Anyways, I entered the barn. While saying my prayers, I made a bed for myself with the hay against the far wall. And, of course, the barn was a weak structure that was made of wood with gaps between the slats. However, I wasn't able to think of anything other than my prayers at the time. Later, I laid down the hay and stayed like that for a while. However, I wasn't able to sleep because of my fear. I wanted the morning to come as soon as possible. I was hoping that time would pass if I can just get to sleep. But just as I was starting to eventually doze off, I start hearing knocks on the door of the barn. I opened my eyes. I thought someone had entered the barn. I was able to see outside because of the gaps in the door. However, I couldn't see anyone in front of the barn. I started praying again. It seemed to work before, so it might work again. I prayed for about 5 or 10 minutes straight until I started to hear the knocking again. This time, not on the door, but on the outside of the wall that I had made my bed by. I got the courage to run to the door and then bolt to the main house. I felt as if someone, or probably something, was chasing me while I was running because I could hear footsteps on the stones behind me, matching my pace. When I finally made it to the main house, I screamed and I banged on the door so loud that my parents finally did wake up. Then the thing behind me disappeared. I told my parents what happened, and the next day they took me to the Haja in the village. The Haja said prayers and prepared a protective amulet for me. I'm very thankful for that Haja and the amulet because it's been 10 years since that incident and I haven't had anything happen since. But I'll never forget that night.
This is Hypsie Gap Road by Raven Rook. Have you been to the Poconos in the last 15 years? Well, don't. Seriously. The traffic is a nightmare. The infrastructure hasn't kept up with the population growth, and on top of that, roughly 25 miles of Route 80 runs through the area. Every time someone on the interstate fucks up, all the vehicles spill out onto the local roads and traffic snarls for hours. Which is why, not long after getting my driver's license in my first car, I started exploring back roads. Even back then, the traffic situation was an unholy mess, so I was eager to learn as many alternate routes as possible. Sometimes after work, I'd pick an area and drive around for a while, just to see where different streets would take me. Occasionally, I'd study maps too, but I really enjoyed the freedom that came with exploration. Only a few minutes from my house was a road called Hypsie Gap. It didn't really look like it went anywhere, so I ignored it for months. Then one day, miles north, I came across another sign for Hypsie Gap Road. I was a little dubious. It was so far from the one near my house, but it wasn't exactly a common name either. Later, I checked a map and sure enough, it was the same road. Part of it ran through the state game lands, which explained why it looked like it went nowhere. Excited by the possibility of a new back road so close to home, I decided to scope it out the next afternoon. Things started out well enough. There were a few homes along the first half mile or so, but then the houses gave way to trees and the macadam abruptly narrowed to a single lane of dirt and rocks. Okay, so it would be a bumpy ride. But that hardly fazed me. Half of the paved roads in the Poconos were like riding a pogo stick through a quarry anyway. Who cared if the terrain was a little rough? For a while, I drove and admired the scenery. It was really quite peaceful back there, all wooded and green and quiet. I had to drive slowly because of the uneven road, but it still beat sitting in traffic. Then the road began to climb up a hill, which soon became more of a mountain. The ground to my right pulled away, and soon I was driving on a narrow ledge cut into the mountain. The road went from rough to rutted, and I began to question the wisdom of this little jaunt. Some of the ruts were deep, and I could easily imagine my car getting stuck. That was enough to convince me I should turn around, but now I had a new problem. There was no place I could turn. I pressed on slowly, carefully, telling myself that the ground would have to level out eventually, but instead I was just climbing higher while the terrain grew steeper, and the ruts jolted my car more violently. Finally, I came to a stop, put the car in parked, and climbed out to assess the situation. I stood there for a few minutes and realized that I really was in the middle of nowhere. There were no signs of human activity, not even a garbage tossed down the embankment. The air smelled like pine and loam and decaying leaves, and for the first time in years I couldn't hear even a murmur of traffic. I was well and truly alone, which I wouldn't normally mind, but I didn't like the idea of getting stranded that way. Checking my phone, I saw I had no reception either, which did nothing to calm my fraying nerves. I'd just have to keep going. I walked a few yards up the road, curious if conditions got any better ahead or if the mountain might start sloping back down soon. I didn't get very far before an unpleasant tingling sensation began to itch across my skin. Have you ever stood under power lines? I don't mean the ones that web through your neighborhood or rise and fall along country roads. I mean industrial lines, the heavy-duty kind that stretch between massive steel pylons, with dozens of glass insulators gleaming turquoise in the sun. You can hear the crackle of electricity overhead, like a huge sweater full of static, and you can feel it too. There's this throb in the air, a thrum that gets into your skin and your blood and dances along your nerves. As I stood in the road, that feeling crept over me. I looked up, but of course there weren't any power lines. I was in the middle of the woods, the middle of nowhere, and on a mountain to boot. But that sensation of energy in the air was undeniable. I creased my brow and strained my ears, and that's when I heard it. Nothing. No birds, no animals. I watched the wind flirt with the trees and never heard a rustle of leaves. My nape prickled. Ice water trickled into my stomach. I looked down at my chest, rising and falling rapidly now, and I realized I couldn't even hear the sound of my own breathing. I was almost afraid to get into my car. What if the door didn't make any noise either? But that sensation was growing, mounting, expanding, and my skin felt like it might split if I stood there any longer. I bolted back, threw myself behind the wheel and slammed the door, which, to my relief, I did hear. I swear it sounded flat though, like there wasn't enough air to carry the vibration properly. I twisted the key in the ignition and the engine started right up. Praise the baby Jesus, praise Buddha, praise Henry Ford. I'd made up my mind to push onward, just to get the fuck away from here. I mean, I knew this road led out eventually. I'd seen it on the damn map. I'd seen the end of it myself. I yanked the car into gear and hit the gas, only to slam on the brakes a second later. I literally kissed the steering wheel, and that evening I'd realized my lip was swollen and gritty with dry blood. Although at the time I was too panicked to even feel it. Something had just appeared in the middle of the road, maybe 30 yards from my car. Something large, something muscular, something with antlers. A deer, a buck, walking slowly up the road. I started to laugh at myself. What an ass I was, sitting in the middle of the woods, spooked by quiet, and a damn deer. It was one big-ass buck, but this was the Poconos for pity's sake. You practically got to elbow deer out of the way just to walk through your own backyard. My hand moved to the steering wheel, ready to poke the horn, when the laughter died on my lips. The antlers were atypical, or asymmetrical, which is rare but not exactly unheard of. The points stuck out at crazy angles, some of them up, some of them out, some of them branching down towards the ground. One main beam looked fairly normal, while the other was as thick around as my bicep. Uneven velvet, black and patchy, clung to the antlers like blight to a tree, and stringy gray webs stretched between the larger points. But the real problem was the legs. As the buck approached, I realized they were jointed all wrong. The knees bending backward with every step. The cloven hooves didn't end in the usual dainty toes, but instead turned upward into a strange, blunt claw. For a few desperate seconds, I thought it must be my brain playing a trick on me, like when you glance at a window and the smudges on the glass become a hellish face. But each awful step closer only confirmed the reality of what I saw. As this impossible animal neared the car, that silence enveloped me again. The grumble of the engine didn't sputter, didn't choke, it just stopped. For one horrible, infinite, bottomless moment, I knew I was screwed. My chest expanded and contracted soundlessly, and my hands shook as they tightened around the steering wheel. Then I realized the trembling in my fingers wasn't just fear, but those 4 cylinders still firing away. Even though I couldn't hear the engine, I could still feel it. I immediately grabbed the gear shift again and jammed it into reverse. One hand on the wheel and my neck craned toward the rear windshield, I gunned it. The car slammed over the rutted ground, and to this day, I don't know how I kept it on that scarred and narrow road. Adrenaline is a hell of a thing. I tore ass backwards all the way down that mountain, branches scratching at the paint and rocks shuddering the frame, until the terrain leveled out and I could turn around in the first tiny clearing I saw. I scraped the bumper and damn near took off my passenger mirror in the process, but I didn't care. I just wanted to put as much distance between myself and that abomination as possible. By the time I reached the pavement and the houses, I was ready to happily sit in traffic every day for the rest of my life. Although I've never gone back, over the years I've heard news of Hypsie Gap Road, and it's never good. A young man found murdered, his killer unknown to this day. Another homicide victim discovered dead in the road a few years later. Then 2 years ago, the skull of a man turned up back there, 16 months after he'd been reported missing. The cause of death still hasn't been determined in that one, as far as I know. I do know this much. There's something wrong with that place. And whether the deer and the silence are part of the sickness or merely symptoms, it hardly matters. Who can guess what other bones wait beneath the carpet of dead leaves? What other monsters might tread those quiet woods? So do yourself a favor, stay out of the Poconos, and if you do get caught in traffic here, make damn sure you're careful about your shortcuts.
I want to start things off simply. I'm a 23-year-old dropout living out of an old apartment building in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. My place isn't too bad, but small-town life can get hectic. There isn't much for work here, and what is available is less than ideal. I was never the type to want to work my days away on some farm. I'd rather take my chances with something more mundane. But easy jobs pay little, and to no one's surprise, I'm not the only one who couldn't be bothered to break their back to get by. So, all the good jobs are taken. This means that I'm usually strapped for cash. I'm one of those people who get by on nothing but government checks and handouts. I'm not proud of it, but that's just the way it is. I've been meaning to move out somewhere else where I can find better work for decent pay. But since I would need money to do that in the first place, I'm kinda stuck. Anyway, I think I should just get to the point. The reason you're probably reading this right now. About a month or two ago, I received an email offering me a job. It was from an older couple who said they needed someone to watch over their home while they were away for the week. The details seemed simple enough. They just wanted me to stay and watch over their house. I had assumed they were just paranoid about robbers or wildlife. But I was wrong. So fucking wrong. I would never have guessed the reality of the situation in 100 years. To any normal person, you probably would have looked over the email and assumed it was spam. But I needed cash now, so I decided to just go with it. That was my biggest mistake looking back on it. I don't even know how they got a hold of my email in the first place. Everyone thinks that I had some sort of nervous breakdown or something like that. But I know what I saw. The things that I felt. No imbalance of the mind or mental break could ever replicate the horrible things that I saw at that house in the woods. The day it all began started normal enough. I woke up, laid in bed for about an hour, then pulled myself from the warmth of my covers. It was another day, alone in my apartment. Normally, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast the day before. But for that day, I remember everything that happened. From the minuscule details to the happy moments of excitement and joy. I never expected that the following days would leave me plagued with fear. Sometimes, it seems like nothing can quell the pain. I spent most of the day relaxing on the couch, baking in the heat that surged through my living room windows. I was glued to my phone watching funny videos online and chatting with a few of my friends when I received the email. I can only recall sheer curiosity beginning to rise within me, especially as I read the most important part of the message. They were offering $30 an hour to any random asshole to just live in their house for a week. I couldn't believe it at first. I had decided that the only way to know for sure would be to look up the provided address and make sure that the place even actually existed. I was met with surprise to see that it was real. The home was exactly as they depicted it. Finally, I decided to call the number of the address and confirm they were in fact offering such a job. As it turns out, they were. I instantly became excited. For a full week, I would be paid $30 an hour just to watch some random house. This was pretty much my dream job. It was like the stars had all aligned and I was finally gonna catch a break. I became even happier when I realized that the place was located only an hour or so away from where I was. This was it. With that kind of money, I could begin looking for a new place to live. Somewhere that I would be able to finally make something of myself, instead of just lazing around all day, living off of other people's work. Though, I did appreciate the fact that I had such a system to rely on in my time of need. This seemed like an opportunity to change some of the more negative aspects of my life. A part of me even thought that if I took initiative, I could earn some respect, especially from my family. My parents always acted supportive of my life choices, but I knew that deep down they didn't respect me. And honestly, I could understand why. The rest of my family, however, were much less reserved about their thoughts, and would often send me overbearing text about how I needed to rethink this or that, and how I was just going to continue to be a loser if I didn't change my lifestyle. I mean, I knew they were right, which is why I never really tried to argue with them, but still. I would have gotten the message just as well with a real conversation. Perhaps this job offer would be the thing that I needed to change my mindset, I thought. Like a push over the edge, so to speak. Well, I did go over the edge. An edge that meets an abyss so far down that even in the clear light of day, darkness is all I can see above me. They say that once you reach a certain point, you'll only be able to go up from there. But that's far from the truth. Whoever said that never experienced what I'm about to tell you all. Trust me, there is no going up from here. I promise you that. After contacting the owners of the place to confirm the email, I began to question the safety of what I was really doing. I mean, I had no clue who these people even were, and now I was just agreeing to stay over at their house for a week? That was crazy, right? Those are the type of thoughts I had for the first couple of hours before I began to reconsider my doubts. I heard their voices. They were just a nice older couple. They sounded like they couldn't hurt a fly. There's no way anything could go wrong, right? I needed to stop overthinking it and just be happy for myself. I was given a chance to make some real cash for the easiest job imaginable. The rest of the morning I spent contemplating on how I could use the money besides obvious things like a new apartment. I was curious as to what was possible. There were a few things that I needed, but more importantly, I wanted a new car. I was fine with buying a used one as long as it looked halfway decent and ran better than the old piece of junk I had outside. And if I found a good enough deal for a nice enough looking ride, I could probably attract the attention of some girls if I'm lucky. Though, that was the least of my worries, and I'm not even just talking about the event. I'm a messed up person, like, in general. I've been known to have breakdowns. Never anything akin to what I experienced at that house, but still, I've had pretty bad hallucinations before. Like bright lights and faraway noises. That's what my doctors believe happened to me. That I just finally snapped and had an intense episode. But the scars tell me a different story. Mental and physical alike. The day that was set for me to finally go to the house was nearing, and I was surprisingly relaxed about it. I needed the cash so bad that I didn't have an ounce of energy to spare the rational side of my brain. So I continued to think about how great the opportunity was. And in all honesty, it was a good deal. Under any other circumstances, I'd probably be pretty damn happy right now. And $5,000 richer. I was texting my friend James when I heard it. There was a sudden thud against my window. Now, this would have normally freaked me out, but I was waiting for some company that day, so I just assumed that my friends were there. I turned around to face the glass, completely expecting to see one of my buddies, clad in sports gear with a nice box of cold ones. We were planning on watching the game today and just generally relaxing before I went off for the week. However, when I looked out the window, I didn't see my friends. In fact, there wasn't anyone out there at all. I got up and approached the glass to see if maybe they had been trying to scare me or pull some sort of spooky prank. But all I got was more of nothing. I had felt spooked, but at the point I was almost certain there was no prank. Come on, guys, I know you're out there. The doors are unlocked, just come in already. I know you're trying to freak me out, okay? I said, trying to convince myself that everything was as it should be. No response. I thought to myself, even if they were out there hiding, chances are they probably couldn't hear me through the glass. So, like an idiot, I opened the door, poked my head outside, and repeated myself. Come on, I know what's going on, it's really not funny. Get in here, I think it's starting. This time I got a response, which calmed me down for a moment. We're here, no need to stress, my friend said out of nowhere. I was happy to hear him speak. However, just as soon as I heard his voice, I realized where it was coming from. He wasn't speaking from outside. His voice came from inside the house. Drew? How did you get into my apartment? Hello? I spoke with enough volume that anybody outside could have heard me. I was petrified as I returned my gaze to the living room. I expected to see him somewhere within the general area, but he wasn't anywhere to be seen. I started to question myself, and even half believed that I was going through some sort of episode. I remember a few years back, I had a conversation over the phone with a friend, only to find out they had changed their number a week prior. I opened up my phone to see if any of the chat logs mentioned a party, and sure enough, there was nothing. I scrolled through the messages with Drew, thinking that maybe we had talked since and I just couldn't remember. Only for the conversation to cap with a few pulls from my finger. That didn't make any sense. I've been texting with this guy on and off every day for the last few months, so the chat should have been able to keep scrolling for at least a minute or two. I decided to skim through some of the text as I walked through the hallway. I reached the door to my bedroom and gave a quick scan to see if my friend was hanging out in there. There was nobody, although something was a little off. I couldn't decide if everything was as I left it or not. The room didn't seem very messy, yet it looked like it had perhaps been searched. At that moment, I was sure that I was going through something mental. I pulled up my phone and tapped the call icon for Drew. The ringing seemed to have some sort of delay on it, because it almost sounded like the noise was playing twice, just slightly off. I turned down the call volume on my phone to make the annoying sound stop, but it didn't. The ring kept playing, yet it sounded far away. I instantly realized that the delay was Drew's phone ringing from the living room. What the fuck? Drew? How did you... I cut myself off as I opened the door. When I stepped into the hallway, I saw him. He was walking from the living room towards me. He looked a bit taller than I remember. Or maybe I felt a bit shorter. What were you doing in there? You're missing the good parts, dude, he said with a concerned look on his face. The way he stared at me at that moment made me doubt everything that just happened. Was it all just some vividly twisted memory? What was going on? How do you get in here? I asked him with fear printed on my face. You just told me to come in. Are you okay, man? You don't seem alright. He responded with an assertive tone as if I was acting crazy. But you weren't there. Nobody was. Nobody was out there, but I heard you behind me. You were in my fucking house. I started to raise my voice at him, which is something that I've never done before. Drew and I were good friends, and normally I would never have been able to yell or scream at him. But I felt a wave of confusion and anxiety washing over me. Please calm down. I have no clue what the hell you're talking about. You and I just literally had a conversation about some house or something, remember? I've been here, dude. He raised some more questions in me that I just couldn't answer. I couldn't understand the premise of this sudden lapse of memory. In the past, I would have consistent symptoms of anxiety and depression before hallucinating. But I felt perfectly fine all day. When I first heard the pounding against my windows, I felt good. I was thinking my friends were finally here to keep me company, and I was excited to party and get wasted with them. This was completely abnormal. However, it wouldn't be the first time I experienced a break under unknown circumstances. Though strange events like that were few and far between. I began to calm down and responded with some level of understanding. I think I might be having some sort of episode or something. I'm sorry, I don't want to put you through this. I'm ruining the big day with my stupid bullshit. I replied to him in a way as to ease his concerns. In the past, I've found that expressing some semblance of self-awareness during my episodes seems to ease people's concerns, like they haven't completely lost faith in me. Don't try to convince yourself that you're okay. You're fucked up, he said suddenly, in a slow and collected tone. I didn't understand what could have made him say something like that. Well, not initially. What? How could he say something like that? I asked him with a little bit of hurt in my voice. You're gonna be okay? Why wouldn't I say something like that? I'm trying to help. I don't understand. He said this in a way that seemed even more confused than I was. I thought you said something else, maybe. I lost patience with myself at that point. I didn't want to say anything else that could cause some sort of issue between me and him. Do you want me to call somebody? He asked calmly. No, it's good. Really. I'm just having some problems, I guess. Again, I'm sorry, I said avoidantly. I then remembered that I was supposed to be having more friends over and wondered why they hadn't shown yet. Hey, so, where is everybody? I asked. Huh? He replied. Where are the guys? The whole gang was supposed to be here with you. What happened? I repeated my question in another way. Yeah. I think they just didn't want to come, maybe? Yeah. They said they had some changes in their schedules. He responded like he didn't initially know what to think. Maybe he was just being a little forgetful, I thought to myself. Well, that really sucks. I was looking forward to them showing up. Should I call them? I asked him. Looking back now, I think that I may have been testing him. No, you shouldn't. They're probably very busy with their plans and wouldn't want to be disturbed. Just come over and watch the game with me. That's why I'm here, right? Yeah. For sure, man. I replied relatively slowly, but tried to sound as agreeable as I possibly could. I just didn't want to stir the pot or psych myself out anymore. We began to walk back when I noticed the back of his shirt. There was dirt lightly smeared across his shoulder. It was hard to notice, but not invisible, especially from that close. There's some dirt on your shoulder. Were you at the family farm before you came over? I expected him to say something along the lines of, "What family farm? We don't have one of those." But what I got instead shocked me. Yeah. I was just helping out in the field. It's tough work, but it helps to build character, you know? Besides, you can't leave family hanging, right? He smiled back at me for a moment, then chuckled. His family has never owned a farm. To be continued.
Alright, so check this out. For no rhyme or reason, the dream started with me waking up in my room, but not the room where I had just fallen asleep. This is important. Perhaps I had yet to truly tune out the thoughts of the day because this proved to be something I took to be an irrefutable truth. The moment doubt was conceived by the discrepancy, the sounds of sunshine streaming into the room were replaced with silent shades of night. Before long, the bedside window was nearly black, bearing no resemblance to any moonless night the real world could have witnessed. Opposite where I was sitting, there was a darkness that diverted my attention towards the door. I could tell that the closed door meant nothing to whatever was creeping up from behind it. The dread that came with detecting a presence pushing past the door forced my fight or flight response. Not that the room was fit for such fantasies. The closest thing I could manage was cowering under the covers. Any fear was out of focus when I woke up. My mind might have been muddled, but nothing could stop me from noticing I was in the same room as before. Well, the same, save for the now open door. Second guessing was enough for my subconscious to justify subjecting me to seeing that thing. It must have gotten sick of just darkening things because the room was now soaked in a scarlet shade that sharpened the silhouette of the shadowy figure slipping towards me. I wish that I had a solid description of that thing, but I draped the sheets over my head too quickly to see it clearly. Within seconds, I was awake, this time in the right room. The darkness was definitely gone, but I could have sworn the sunny setting in front of me was somehow similar to something that I had already seen. I thought I was being deceived, but nothing out of the ordinary was happening. I cautiously crept out from under the covers and started down the stairs. Something still didn't sit right with me, though. Not until I met my mother going about her morning, almost mocking me. My mom made me feel at ease, even as she had me set up the table for whatever she was cooking. I could tell she was looking at me to explain my lack of complaining and why I had left my bed so early. When I mentioned my dream, someone must have taken that to mean I still suspected I was dreaming, because the person in front of me was no longer a person at all, much less my mom. Their smile was widening, and their eyes were darkening. All I could do was drown in the black sea of the sinister stare that had set on me. That thing left me without thought, even the thought that I was dreaming.
This story is entitled The Shadow Man, written by Phoenix Fire. This story is also loosely based off true events. Darkness. Pitch black, ice-cold darkness. I have seen it now for quite some time. That night was the first time since I woke up that I realized that my room was freezing cold and darker than normal. I rolled onto my back and looked around in confusion. It was so damn dark. So pitch black dark. But I could see. It was all so clear. I looked around, still groggy from my sleep aid. There was a cabinet, a queen-sized wooden bed with a wooden nightstand next to it, a dresser with a mirror attached, and a small chair in the corner of the room. All of it felt unusual, yet so familiar. Out of nowhere, there he sat, the Shadow Man. I could see him sitting in the small chair in the corner of the room towards the foot of the bed. He opened his eyes and stared at me. He had short black hair and a pale face. He wore a black coat with a red collar and a black shirt underneath. He looked at me with luminous, penetrating red eyes and growled,
"Hello there. Would you like to leave?"
I froze. What did he say? Did he just ask if I wanted to leave? I remained quiet. He stood up and walked toward me. I was petrified. The fear held me prisoner under the covers as he approached me. Panic struck me like a bolt of lightning as my heart began to race. It felt like it was going to beat right out of my chest.
"If you would like to leave, speak now,"
he blustered in a baritone, hair-raising, cadaverous voice. Whatever he was, it wasn't human. "Who the fuck are you? What do you want from me?" I managed to stammer out. My breathing became labored. I was sweating so much I felt glued between the blanket and the mattress. An evil grin uncoiled across his pale face as his eyes narrowed into slits. He let out a low growl that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand at end. Long, blood-stained, razor-sharp teeth spilled over his black lips.
"Do you want to leave?"
he boomed. His voice echoed through the room so garishly, the walls shook. I was trembling so bad I felt like I was going to piss myself. The covers were going to pulverize my ribs at any moment now, it seemed. "Yes, I want to leave. Let me out of here," I finally screamed. My head began to dizzy, and I felt like I was going to pass out. My heart felt like it was going to burst. He ripped the covers back, grabbed my ankle, and dragged me out of bed. I was completely stiff with fear. Every muscle felt paralyzed. I could do nothing but helplessly watch from within my own body. My body hit the wall as my head thudded like a rock against the floor. The force of which I was being dragged seared a friction burn right into my back. Why couldn't I move? My vision was blurred from the sweat and tears in my eyes. Rattling. I think I hear rattling. The ringing in my ears was so loud it was hard to determine what was happening. I think he was opening a strange door that I didn't recognize. I felt a rush of bitterly cold air sweep over me, and I was yanked even harder through a doorway.
"You wanted to leave. Now's your chance. I will give you until the count of 3. Get up and run."
My body slammed into the ground, knocking the air out of me as he let me go. His footsteps were loud and heavy as he sauntered away from me, back into my apartment. I couldn't sit upright. My body was still paralyzed as I gasped for air. I looked up through blurred, teary vision and saw his shadow creeping back toward me. I arched my neck backward so I could peer behind me. A cloud of pitch-black darkness quickly washed over me. I faintly heard him growling.
1, 2.
I felt myself slip from consciousness. Flashing lights. Bright, flashing lights. My head pounded and the deafening ring in my ears began to subside as I finally came to. "Whoa, take it easy, just lay still and try not to take it too fast," came a voice that I didn't recognize. "What? Where am I?" I asked. "You're laying outside your front door. We heard screams and loud banging. It woke us up and we came over to see if you were okay. How did you end up out here? Is everything all right? As my vision finally focused, I recognized the voice talking to me. My neighbors were standing over me with flashlights. A look of fear and concern stamped their faces. Is he gone? Did you see him? I said as I slowly sat up and held my throbbing head. See who? There's no one here but you. You're soaking wet and it's freezing out here. Do you need to go to the hospital? My neighbors asked. The tall, pale man with red eyes, he was just here, I grunted. The feeling in my body came rushing back as I began moving my legs to stand up. Tall man with red eyes? What are you talking about? There's no one here but you and us. Are you sure you're okay? Maybe we should call the police. No, I'm fine. I must have hit my head a little too hard. I'll be okay. Thank you for coming over and checking on me. I'll take it from here. The neighbors helped me to my feet, and I told them goodnight as they ushered me back into my apartment. I turned the lights on and saw wet streaks along the floor that trailed through the hallway. I limped back to my bedroom and noticed the bedding crumpled on the floor. I plucked the pillows and blankets from the floor and made my bed. I sat on the edge of my bed trying to recollect what happened. My head was throbbing so bad, all I wanted to do was get some rest. I lay down and instantly slipped back into slumber. As I awoke the next morning, a sharp pain shot through my back. What in the hell happened last night? I felt like I had been beaten down with a sack of bricks. I shook the fogginess from my head and started my day. That evening, when I returned home, I took one of my trazodones so that I could get a peaceful night's rest. The sleep drug rapidly set in and I finally drifted off. Sometime during the night, I rolled over onto my back. I felt an ice-cold breeze sweep over me. My eyes shot open to an eerie, pitch-black darkness. I began to panic. From the foot of my bed, I heard a deep, sinister voice snarl.
Would you like to leave?
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to turn on my post notifications so you can be notified for all my future narrations. A special thanks to all the awesome, talented people who joined me in this celebration and collaboration. Don't forget to check them out as well. If you have a story or experience you want read on the channel, you can email me or message me on one of my social medias down below. And remember, nightfall is upon us.